single mom was mocked for touching a piano when she played one note and made even the CEO tear up. Stay with me till the very end and let me know where you're watching from so I can see how far the truth really spreads. Claire Monroe moved through the ballroom like she always did. Quiet, unnoticed. A cafeteria worker in a borrowed black blouse wiping down tables covered in wine stains and expensive crumbs. She never belonged to this world, and she knew it. The Steinway piano stood just beyond the edge of her cart. Claire paused beside it, adjusting a chair someone had carelessly bumped out of place. As she reached forward, her fingertip grazed a single key. It sang out soft, high, pure. That tiny sound cut through the gala like a mistake too loud to ignore. Heads turned. Then the laughter started. Langston Burke leaned back in his chair with a wine glass in hand and eyes like razors. His voice carried casual but cruel. "Well, looks like even the soup girl wants a solo." Claire froze. Her throat clenched so tight she couldn't swallow. But he wasn't finished. He stood up slowly and raised his glass. "Let's all applaud tonight's unexpected entertainment." Who knew cafeteria staff came with such artistic ambition? The room erupted, not just laughter. Smirks, whispers, raised eyebrows. Even the string quartet chuckled behind their music stands. Claire's hand dropped to her side. Her breath caught. Her cheeks burned hot. She wanted to disappear into the floor, to run to scream. But all she could do was stand there, gripping her cleaning rag like it could hold her together. At the back of the room, behind the kitchen doors, Mia stood completely still. Her sketchbook was clutched to her chest, eyes wide, not blinking. Her mother was being mocked, publicly, loudly, and no one said a word to stop it. Claire didn't cry, not then. She bent down, picked up a spoon, and kept moving like nothing had happened. But something inside her cracked sharp and quiet. Not from what they said, from knowing Mia heard it. She turned her back on the Steinway, on the applause, on the man who had turned her silence into a circus. She didn't see Mia start to draw, but she would. Claire didn't always serve behind steam trays or sweep confetti from marble floors. Before the silence, there was sound. And before cafeteria shifts, there was Juilliard. She had a gift, not just in her fingers, but in her heart. Her instructors used to say she played like she was translating something the world forgot how to feel. She never played to impress. She played because it made her feel more alive. The piano was where she confessed, dreamed, forgave, and prayed. She fell in love young. His name was Marcus. He had kind eyes and hands that always smelled faintly of graphite from sketching blueprints. He brought her hot chocolate during late-night practices and sat quietly in the corner just to listen. When she played, he never spoke. He said it would ruin the magic. They married in a small courthouse with only a borrowed bouquet and a cracked Polaroid camera. Life was messy, but it was theirs. Claire played weddings, taught lessons, and wrote music late into the night. Among her students was a shy 12-year-old named Emily Roth. Tiny hands, trembling posture. Emily couldn't meet Claire's eyes the first month. She barely touched the keys. But Claire saw something in her. She slowed her teaching, broke each note into a whisper, reminded Emily that music wasn't something you needed to prove, just something you needed to feel. One evening after class, Emily left a folded paper on the piano bench. Inside was a drawing of Claire at the keys smiling. At the bottom were words in shaky cursive. "I don't just learn music from you, I learn not to give up on myself." Claire kept that note. Then came the phone call. Marcus. A car crash. Rain. Static. The kind of silence that doesn't leave. Claire didn't scream. She walked home, sat at her piano, placed her fingers on the keys, and felt nothing. The music that once held her together now shattered her. Every note reminded her of his laugh, his breath, his absence. She stopped teaching, stopped composing, sold the piano to pay rent, gave away her sheet music, turned off every radio station that dared play anything beautiful. When Mia was 3, Claire took a job wiping tables at Lexington Hall. It wasn't supposed to be forever, but grief doesn't have deadlines. 10 years passed. She moved like a shadow through the halls, past rehearsal rooms and concert flyers, past grand pianos that whispered to her as she passed, but never loud enough to make her stop. Claire became someone else, someone quiet, someone useful, someone who didn't play anymore. But sometimes late at night when no one was watching, she still paused near the Steinway. Just for a moment. Not to remember, not yet, just to feel something stir. On Tuesday nights when Claire worked the late shift and the building emptied out, Mia would sometimes come with her. She'd sit at one of the back tables with her sketchbook legs swinging crayons rolling across the plastic tray. The staff didn't mind. She was quiet, polite, and she always cleaned up after herself. That night, the piano sat untouched on the stage, a Steinway with polished keys and a history no one talked about. Claire passed by it with the same silent familiarity as always, her mop bucket trailing behind her. But then she stopped, just for a second. Mia looked up from her drawing. Her mom stood in front of the piano, not moving, just staring at it. Then slowly, Claire raised one hand and let her fingers rest gently on the keys. Not pressing, just touching, like the way someone might reach for a photograph they can't quite look at. Mia didn't speak at first. She just watched wide-eyed, trying to understand what her mom was hearing in her head that wasn't playing out loud. Then in a voice almost too soft to break the silence, she asked why. Claire blinked, hands still on the keys. She didn't turn around. She said it like the words were already waiting there. Because it remembers things I'm still trying to forget. Mia didn't ask anything else. She didn't need to. She picked up her pencil and began sketching again. But this time it wasn't the chairs or the cups or the view from the table. She drew her mother, standing at the piano, not playing, just touching. The silence that filled the room wasn't empty. It was full of something Mia didn't yet have words for. But she knew it mattered. She knew this wasn't just about music. The rehearsal room gleamed under soft lighting. Musicians rehearsed in one corner, while guests floated in and out with glasses in hand. Claire moved through them unnoticed, picking up napkins and resetting plates. Her steps were practiced, invisible. But then she found herself standing too close to the Steinway again. Langston Burke saw her. He leaned toward a group of donors near the stage and said it louder than necessary. "Is she still circling that piano like it might play itself?" Someone snorted. Another guest, a woman in a velvet dress, raised her brows. "Maybe she thinks if she touches it enough times she'll turn into someone else." Langston chuckled. "Or maybe she thinks pianos work like microwaves. Push a button, wait 3 minutes, and boom, you get a standing ovation." The laughter hit Claire in waves, small at first, then sharper. She kept her eyes low, then she didn't. She turned. Her face was calm, still, but her eyes locked on Langston's like a door he wasn't supposed to open. He raised his glass in mock apology. "My mistake. Didn't mean to interrupt the kitchen staff's spiritual awakening." Claire didn't answer. She didn't move quickly either. She just walked away slow and upright, her hands empty, but her silence louder than anything he had said. From the far side of the room, Mia watched. She saw it all. Her fingers trembled on the pencil, then steadied. She began to draw her mother not as the others saw her, but as she was now, upright, unshaken, holding back a storm inside her chest. Claire didn't look back, but something inside her had shifted, not shattered, just shifted. The rehearsal had ended. The lights were dim, the crowd gone, and the hall settling into silence again. Claire sat on a folding chair backstage, her apron folded beside her head, tilted back against the wall. Her breath came slower now, like she had been holding something in all night and was finally letting it go. Mia wandered quietly in the shadowed corner behind the curtain. Her eyes landed on her mother's bag, half-zipped and slouched open on the floor. She didn't mean to snoop, but the edge of a notebook caught her eye. It looked older than anything else in the bag. Worn edges, bent corners, the kind of thing someone once carried everywhere. She opened it. Inside were faded pencil-marked staffs and bars, some crossed out, some circled, small notes written in the margin. There were pieces of melodies, pages of pauses. Then she saw the title, Mia's Lullaby. It was handwritten at the top of a half-finished sheet. The notes stopped midway, like a breath that never fully exhaled. She turned to her mom notebook open in her hands. Her voice was small. "Why didn't you finish this?" Claire's head dropped. Her eyes didn't meet Mia's. She reached out and took the notebook gently, like it might crumble in her hands. Then she stared at it for a long moment. Her voice cracked as she finally spoke. "Because I didn't think I'd get to sing to you anymore." The words hung in the air like smoke. Mia didn't respond right away. She just moved closer, placing her hand on her mom's knee. Claire closed the book slowly, her fingers trembling at the spine. Her chest lifted once, then sank. She looked at her daughter, and something shifted in her face. A softness buried under 10 years of silence began to rise. The lullaby wasn't gone, just waiting. The final performance had just ended. Soft claps, shifting chairs, scattered conversation, the kind of polite noise people made when preparing to leave something they didn't expect to remember. Claire stood in the shadows behind the curtain, wiping her hands on a napkin, just another worker blending into the background. Then a voice came through the microphone, calm, steady, familiar. "Before we close, I'd like to ask someone very dear to me to come on stage, someone who taught me that music is not perfection, it's presence." The room quieted. Emily Roth stood in the spotlight, no longer the trembling 12-year-old with unsure hands. She wore a sleek black dress, her voice sure, her gaze anchored. She looked around then toward the side of the stage, toward Claire. "Years ago, I couldn't play a single note without crying. Claire Monroe gave me my first music. Tonight, I'm just giving a little of it back." Claire's breath caught. Whispers swept across the audience. Langston smirked behind his wine glass, but even he didn't speak. Claire remained still. Then she felt a small hand take hers. "Mia." Her voice was almost nothing, but it carried everything. "It's okay to remember." Claire stepped forward. She didn't walk fast. She moved like someone crossing a bridge they weren't sure would hold. But when she reached the Steinway, she didn't tremble. She sat. The bench creaked. Her hands hovered. 10 years of silence pressed against her ribs, but she didn't look away. She placed her fingers on the keys. The first note was small, almost shy, then another, then a phrase. The melody of a lullaby, unfinished for years, began to take shape. It wasn't smooth. Her fingers missed once. She paused too long, but she kept going. And with each bar, her sound grew stronger. Not louder, just truer. Claire didn't play like someone proving herself. She played like someone remembering who she used to be. Every note held a heartbeat, a breath, a loss, a love. Mia sat cross-legged just off stage, eyes wide, lips moving along with the music like she already knew every note. The room leaned in. Even the air felt still, as if afraid to interrupt. And as the final passage floated up into the soft lights, Claire closed her eyes, letting the last note linger, not to impress, but to heal. When the final note faded, Claire didn't move. Her hands rested on the keys, still and open. The silence that followed was deep, not awkward, not uncertain. It was the kind of silence people hold when they don't dare break something holy. No one clapped at first. They couldn't. It was as if the entire room had forgotten how to breathe. Every person sat frozen eyes locked on the woman at the piano who had just poured her soul into the room. Then a single pair of hands began to applaud. Slow, steady, certain. Emily. Others turned toward her. Something shifted. One by one, hands followed, then dozens, then everyone. The applause swept through the hall like wind catching fire. No shouts, no whistles, just the sound of hands meeting hands, pure and honest. Langston stood. He didn't clap right away. He just stood, his face unreadable. But he watched her, really watched her. And in his silence was something close to respect. Claire didn't look at him. She looked down, then to her left. Mia was running. Her sketchbook bounced against her chest. She climbed the stage without hesitation, threw her arms around her mother's waist and buried her face into her side. Her voice when she spoke was barely louder than the applause still swelling behind them. "I always knew you were music." Claire dropped her hands from the keys and wrapped her arms around her daughter. The tears came slowly then, all at once. Her chin quivered, her shoulders shook, but she didn't hide it. She had nothing left to hide. Behind them, the Steinway sat glowing under the stage lights. But the real light was in the way Mia held her, in the way people kept clapping even after the moment had passed, in the way silence had made space for something bigger than applause. The weeks that followed felt like waking up in a different world. Claire's story traveled faster than she could imagine. Whispers became headlines. Her name appeared on flyers. Her song, once silenced by grief, now reached people she had never met. Emily Roth called again, not to congratulate her, but to offer her something more, a workshop series, community centers, public schools, a chance to teach kids and elders alike what music really meant. They called it Play Like You Remember. Claire didn't teach scales first. She didn't start with posture or theory. She started with listening. Not to the keys, but to the space between them, to the silence, the breath, the story waiting behind each note. Her classroom wasn't polished. Sometimes it was a gym floor with a keyboard on a rolling cart. Other times it was a senior center with creaky benches and bad lighting. But her students showed up, and so did she. They came with shaky fingers, with forgotten dreams. Some couldn't read music. Some never touched a piano before. But Claire didn't care about perfection. She cared about truth, about what each person carried and how to let it out. She taught a blind boy how to find notes by feel. She taught a grieving father how to pour his loss into a single chord. She didn't play to impress anymore. She played to remember, and through that she helped others do the same. The cafeteria was still there. Sometimes she passed by it on her way to a class. The smell of soup still lingered, but she didn't carry trays anymore. She carried stories. She carried music. People didn't look past her now. They looked for her. They asked her to speak, to play, to teach their kids. Claire, the woman who used to serve food in silence, now served something no less nourishing. Something made not for the stomach, but for the soul. The classroom smelled like crayons and apple juice. Folding chairs lined up crookedly, paper stars taped to the walls, and a hand-painted banner reading Family Arts Night hung a little too low. Claire sat at a slightly out-of-tune upright piano. The wood chipped at the corners, but her fingers rested on the keys like it was the finest instrument in the world. Next to her stood Mia, holding a microphone that squeaked when she tested it. She didn't wear a fancy dress, just a jean jacket with music notes drawn in pen on the sleeves. Claire gave her a small nod, and Mia smiled without saying a word. They began. The first few notes felt like home. The lullaby that once sat unfinished in a notebook now rose into the room soft and full. Mia's voice joined the melody, quiet at first, then stronger. She sang each line like it had always lived in her. No one in the room shifted. No phones were held up. No spotlight. Just parents and teachers and a few sleepy siblings listening with open hearts. The notes didn't echo far, but they landed exactly where they needed to be. Claire glanced at Mia as they played. Her daughter's eyes were closed, swaying just slightly. For a moment, Claire didn't see a little girl. She saw the echo of a promise kept, a song that had waited years to be sung. When the last note faded, there was no roaring applause, just warm clapping, a few teary eyes, a smile from the principal, and a little boy whispering, "I liked that one," to his mom. Claire didn't stand. She stayed on the bench, her hand still resting near the final chord. Mia sat beside her. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. She didn't need a stage, or velvet curtains, or a grand piano. She just needed a room where her music could be heard, a place where her daughter could sing beside her, a night where nothing was perfect, but everything was true. The lights had dimmed, the chairs were stacked. The last bits of laughter from the hallway faded behind the closing door. Claire stayed behind in the quiet room alone, except for Mia, who was gathering her drawings from a nearby table. Claire stood in front of the piano not to play, but to look. Her fingers hovered, then rested gently on the keys, like greeting an old friend. She didn't press them. She didn't need to. Mia walked over and leaned into her side, holding one of the posters she had drawn. It was messy, colorful, filled with stars and hearts. At the center, two figures at a piano, one playing, one singing. Claire let out a soft breath, the kind that carried no pain, just knowing. She looked down at Mia and said it as if she were remembering something long buried. "I used to think silence protected me." Her voice didn't tremble. It flowed. "But now I know. Music remembers me better than I remembered myself." She didn't say it for applause. There was no crowd, no lights, just the hum of the building settling for the night. But in that moment, her words held more weight than any ovation ever could. She turned back to the piano, let her hand linger one last time, and smiled. It wasn't the smile of performance. It was the smile of recognition, of return. I wasn't playing for applause. I was playing to come home to myself, and finally she had. Sometimes we hear a story, and something in us stirs. Maybe it reminds you of someone you love. Maybe it reminds you of you. If you've ever carried too much alone or been judged for surviving, your voice belongs here too. This space was made for stories that aren't often told, for people who feel invisible but never stop trying. Tell us what part of her story felt real to you, or share your own if you're ready. Someone out there needs to hear it. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.